Okay, let's begin with some meditation. Try to set special motivation for the class this evening. Maybe you remember from many teachings, Lanrim teachings especially, the most important factor that makes an action either virtuous or non-virtuous is the motivation that comes, that propels the action that comes before it. So even like lamchung, small path, sweeping the gompa, the meditation hall of the monks, cleaning their shoes with a special motivation, created great purification, great collection of merit. So even ourselves trying to set a special motivation here to listen to the class, even the experience of listening to the class can become virtual. So relaxing the body and mind, try to place your attention on the respiration. And after bringing your attention somewhat strictly to your respiration, perhaps by counting 21 cycles, or until the mind is a little bit quiet, bring your attention now to a more subtle object of your mental consciousness. Withdraw your attention even further inside, not only away from the external distractions of the objects of sight and sound and so forth, but by focusing on the clarity of the mind, it's always there, presenting itself to you, rather than on the contents of the mind, just shifting your attention away from the content, the discursive thoughts, the imagery, the sounds, the verbiage and so forth. Let go of that, and it will decrease in its amplitude, in its loudness, so to speak, and its frequency, how often it comes. let go again and again of the thoughts, even the thought of the clarity of the mind, and try to sense the clarity that even that thought is embedded within. Going back toward the outer obstacles, outer distractions, let go especially of the sense of the body, the seemingly present all the time body that's appearing to your mental consciousness, being paid attention to, but by defocusing on that and refocusing on the consciousness that perceives it, the clear light nature of that consciousness, the body as though disappears. Within that quiet of the mind, try to perceive the sense of I, the sense of self, the object of negation, through familiarity. You may not have to analyze or instigate it each time, but you start to get a remembering consciousness of it, that you can focus on it more quickly. This I that seems to be so obviously present when we're walking, acting, talking, shopping, studying. Over time, you can start to put more attention on the appearance of that I without it disappearing. The two things you try to notice are how the I appears to exist and how the mind reacts to that appearance. Does it grasp at some kind of conceived object, that it actually is that way? the innate ignorance, grasping to a truly existent self, can be thought of as the root of samsara. From it, all of the rest of our delusions emerge, influenced by it. Recalling that the I that does exist is merely imputed. The conventional I is a mere imputation, a name, a label, a concept. And compare that sense of I with what is appearing to your mind. Does the self seem to be just an imputation, just a concept? In a subtle form of it, it seems to have a natural existence of its own, existing from its own side, without the need to label or impute it. In one sense, we can say the object of observation, the conventional I, that's merged with its appearance of true existence, is not itself truly existent because it's a dependent arising. It arises in dependence upon imputation, a consciousness making that imputation, and the valid basis of designation. Even on the basis of this reasoning, see if you can let go of that appearance of the I, recognizing the conceived object does not exist whatsoever. This truly existent, findable, naturally existent I that has a mode of being from its own side doesn't exist whatsoever. A mere vacuity appears when one has an understanding of this that has been propelled by this reasoning. It's not a thinking consciousness that, in the sense of having conceptual thoughts, thinking this is emptiness, the self does not exist. At this point, there's no more conceptualization, although it might be a conceptual consciousness, not yet a direct realization. Just apprehending a mere vacuity, an emptiness. The certainty of the lack of what was previously appearing and acquiesced to, that which we were certain did exist. also the objects possessed by that self, mainly illustrated by the 5 aggregates that are the basis of designation of the self, that which are called mine. Not just your wristwatch and your car, but your 5 innermost possessions. They too, as the Heart Sutra says, are empty of true existence. They also, not just the self. There is no body in the way that our mind conceives of as existing from its own side. None of the other aggregates. In fact, in the direct experience of emptiness, there's no phenomena whatsoever, no conventional phenomena apprehended whatsoever. Only emptiness is being apprehended. There are no appearance of the eye organ and so forth, no eye consciousness, no objects of eye. The Bodhisattvas realize that even the objects of practice along the path, that which is to be avoided and that which is to be practiced, also don't inherently exist. They have a conventional existence, can act as hindrances or aids. But like the self that appeared to be truly existent and is not, all phenomena are empty. When the Bodhisattvas arise from that understanding, they use it to embellish, to improve their conventional motivation of bodhicitta. If there is no truly existent I, the way that I've believed since beginningless time, I can work for conventionally existent others, because although their suffering doesn't inherently exist, for them, grasping to true existence, it's unbearable. I think for the purpose of attaining enlightenment, not just my own freedom, but a very special, highest state of awakening for the welfare of all beings, so that I can avoid harming them without retaliation, without ego, with love and compassion, acting spontaneously for their benefit. I'm going to participate in the lesson tonight to learn more about emptiness, to contemplate it, think about it, to try to put it into my meditation, my experience. as a prelude to the class, then let's recite the two prayers that we've been reciting, the praise to the Mother, the wisdom gone beyond, and then the Heart Sutra itself, Heart of Wisdom Sutra. Ma samju me shera pa ruchin ma ke minga nam ke mo ni so Thus did I hear, at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There's no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tadyata gate gate para samgate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the bodhisattva mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the bodhisattva mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So, so how are we doing? Understanding the sutra? A little bit? Thea? Something?
Tonight, the eightfold profundity, to try to get a better sense of what that means.
Good. Now, if I were to ask, who could I ask? I better ask Kerry, because he'll know the answer, I'm sure. If I were to ask, like, if you were to just make an outline of the sutra, what would you say the major parts of the sutra are? Without just saying the titles of the parts, without saying these words, those words.
Well, there's the prologue that gives you set and setting.
Okay.
And then you have the discussion between Shariputra and...
Okay, good.
And then you have the conclusion where the Buddha commends them.
That's quite good. That's quite a brief outline. That's quite good. Who could maybe double that? Like put some parts to his head. So he said, first of all, there's the prologue. Remember, is it just one prologue? What is that, Aaron? There's a common prologue, comes at the beginning, and then something a little more specific to this case, the uncommon prologue. So that could be, that is good. You were, maybe Carrie's one of the practitioners of high intellect who is not fond of discursiveness, just like when the Buddha explained the Prajnaparamita Sutra. You know, some people recalled it in 8,000 verses. This one particular incident. Some remembered it in how many verses? What was the next bigger one? 25,000. And then in 100,000. So you might think, sometimes if someone tells a joke, do you have that experience? Some people tell it very briefly. Some tell it a little more elaborately, and then some maybe go over the top a bit, with all the detail, but sometimes it's necessary. Some people, it might be that the sutras were delineated that way in terms of merely the appreciation of the practitioners. What would you think? Would the ones that were more elaborate be suitable for those of highest intellect, necessarily? Like the 100,000 verse, that's probably recited maybe in another sense by those of highest intellect? Maybe those are more patience or more need of saying a lot. Can be that the briefest form, like I was admiring Carrie's threefold division, can be that they don't need as many words, Sometimes it can be that. But you can't say definitely. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said sometime there were two great lamas that were more or less contemporaries, I think. I can't remember. Maybe it was Langdo Lama Rinpoche and Gungtang. I can't remember. I think those two. One of them's teachings were very, very elaborate, And the others' teachings and prayers and verses that he wrote were much more concise. But both of them were correct. It can be just a matter of your kind of predilection, your kind of imprints from past lives. So I can't say for sure. So we have an uncommon and common prologue. Then Carrie said then there was a discussion. So who could, Mark, could you, if you divided up the discussion, does it have parts?
There's a question and then a slightly lengthy answer.
Okay, so if we divide it up, we could make it into two parts, the question and answer. Question's pretty short, right? And the answer is a little bit longer. So what if we divided the answer up now? So we already got common and uncommon prologue, and then the question. Now we're going to divide the answer up. What if we divided the answer up? What do you think, Frank?
The eightfold profundity.
Well, even before that, is there like there's kind of a short answer, right? A short answer, a brief answer? Or that's the same? Yes. Okay, I thought you were going to be even more division. Yeah. The short answer, the brief answer, the condensed answer. It's three. Okay, so there's a kind of a short thing. Before form is empty, emptiness is form. That's the fourfold preventing. What's the short answer? What's Avalokiteshvara say first of all? He says, Shariputra, any son. Yeah, inherent nature. Excellent. Yeah, that's kind of like the whole gist of that short answer. Then he goes into more detail. There's a fourfold profundity, eightfold profundity. And then, is there any name in the text for the next section? Okay, might be worth checking what that's called. Then it's talking about in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and so forth. And none of the 12 entrances or 18 elements, the dhatus. There's not the 12 links. 12 links don't inherently exist, either in their pure or impure forms, impure or pure forms, and also the Four Noble Truths. Even the wisdom that realizes the path consciousness of the bodhisattvas that realize these factors that are conducive to the path, the exalted wisdom, that doesn't inherently exist. Nor are there attainments. We might think certain things you get. You attain. I've attained this state. Even that's just a name. It doesn't have any real inherent existence the way that our mind now grasps at. Also no non-attainment, like we have now, maybe in my case. In your case, different. So, so it's worth... It's a good way of recalling, to have the outline. Same thing in the Lan Rim. When you're meditating on the Lan Rim, if you know the outlines, it's easy to bring forth then the details. Same thing here. If you know the outlines of the sutra, it's easier to bring forth the outlines, bring forth the details of the sutra. So one thing that I've alluded to a little in the past is one of the sort of interesting, more important aspects of the sutra is that the sutra, although it's talking about emptiness explicitly, isn't it? Seems like it's talking about everything is empty, 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 empty. There's no this, there's no that. In emptiness, there's none of this, there's none of that. But also it is implicitly talking about the path structure. That's very much the case in the Prajnaparamita Sutras. All of the Prajnaparamita Sutras. Buddha was mainly talking about emptiness, but he gave examples in some of the sutras of all sorts of things about the path. And he implied by that, if one was aware, one could understand a lot of detail about how the bodhisattvas practice, how the hearers practice, how the solitary realizers practice on their progression to their respective goals. So here, one of the ways it's broken up, this progression, is in terms of the 5 paths. Do you know what the 5 paths are, Eric? Alleys, avenues, boulevards, freeways, and tollways, right? No, those aren't the 5 paths. Do you know what I'm talking about, the 5 paths? You haven't heard that expression before? Yeah, so that's one of them. So the Buddha, the word path, doesn't necessarily mean a destination. It's used here in analogy. It actually means a consciousness when we talk about path. Path refers to the path consciousness that leads you to a certain destination. Okay? And when we talk about entering the path of the Mahayana or entering the path of the Hinayana, there's a certain kind of demarcation that you can notice, that it's delineated. So Diana, what's the demarcation? What's the beginning of the Hinayana path? There might, the actual, like say for instance, if you're going onto someone's estate, there might be a lot of roads. So if you're coming to the land of Medicine Buddha, there might be different roads you can come through. What's it called? Nicene Marks National Park. Maureen was telling me that from her house, in theory, she could walk now through there if she didn't get lost. You could come in that way. You could come in from the mountain down there. A couple of different, you could cross the stream. But what's the actual, and so there would be a certain place where you would enter the Mahayana path. What's the demarcation of the Mahayana path?
Having a realization of bodhicitta.
So if you realize bodhicitta, you've entered in the Mahayana path. So there are different kinds of realizations you can have of bodhicitta. To realize, what does it mean to realize bodhicitta? We've been talking a lot about emptiness, so you kind of have an idea what it means to realize emptiness. To realize bodhicitta, maybe you don't have to have spontaneous bodhicitta, do you? For instance, if you have bodhicitta with effort, isn't that a realization of bodhicitta? When you actually make the determination, I must attain enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, with much reasoning and effort in one meditative session, let's say. That's a realization of bodhicitta, I would imagine. But that itself is not the entryway to the Mahayana path. Yeah, it has to be actual, developed, spontaneous bodhicitta, without effort. So day and night, all the time, rising in your mind, this thought, I must attain enlightenment for the sake of others. That would be the beginning of the Mahayana path. How about the beginning of the Hinayana path? So just realizing renunciation. Yeah. Also, the same term is used, spontaneous renunciation, because let's say if you see the Theravada practitioners, or even ourselves, we may talk about renunciation. We have a certain, there's no problem. It's impermanent, we have certain reasons. But to renounce suffering and not to be overcome by it, but we may not have a spontaneous renunciation. Renunciation kind of has 2 aspects, just like bodhicitta does. It has a sense of being fed up with samsara, and which is kind of like the bodhisattva's discomfort with the suffering of others, the bodhisattva's compassion, right? And it has what they call tardo. You know anyone named Tardo? There's a Geshe in Wisconsin, Geshe Tardo. Tarpa means liberation, moksha. Döpa means to desire. Tardo is a very common Tibetan name. Do you know anyone, Venerable, in Dharamsala? Oh, there you go. Okay. Probably that means desiring liberation. That's one part of renunciation. So when you have that mind that is completely fed up, doesn't see any pleasure in cyclic existence, both by conventional reasoning, understanding they're impermanent, the nature of suffering and so forth, they're not pure, they can't bring real pleasure, and also more subtle reasoning perhaps can embellish that by understanding they're empty of true existence. You can develop one part of renunciation that's fed up with samsara, but that in itself could be just like the existentialists, what do they call it, when they're just fed up with life, kind of a nihilistic kind of attitude. The other part of renunciation is this tardo, desire for liberation. So it has to do with knowing that liberation is possible, same way that the bodhisattva, to develop bodhicitta, has to have some certainty that enlightenment is possible, that the mind can be purified, and then desiring to attain that. So when those states of mind are generated, renunciation arises, but that it doesn't necessarily arise spontaneously. You have to meditate again and again in a very concentrated form, collect merit, eliminate negative karma, for that realization to become spontaneous. You know what spontaneous means, right? That without the effort to think, oh, wait a second, let me see now, this is okay because it's going to change anyway, and I can't take it with me. You might have to sometimes argue with yourself. Part of your mind is still holding to attachment to the conventional things. When you no longer have to rely on reasons, but it is that arises day and night, the aspiration to achieve liberation for oneself, one has attained spontaneous renunciation. So those are kind of the doorways or the gateways into the estate, the path that leads up to the mansion. So one mansion is maybe enlightenment, one mansion is maybe liberation, nirvana. Okay, they're different, right? Okay, so along the way, along that path, there are different landmarks that you can recognize that you're getting closer to the goal. And so the Buddha pointed out what he called 5 paths. And it's the same for the Mahayana and the Hinayana. We've mentioned several times before, but just again, Mark, do you know the 5 paths?
So the path of accumulation.
Path of accumulation.
Path of preparation.
Path of preparation. Path of seeing. Path of meditation. Path of no more learning. Excellent. Don, is that right? Okay. So, a path of accumulation, I think Edward Kanza, the famous, good, Mark. Edward Kanza, a famous scholar that translated the 8,000 verse Prajnaparamita into English from Sanskrit mainly. He also knew Tibetan. He translated the 25,000 verse Prajnaparamita into English. He translated several of the other Prajnaparamita sutras. Quite a famous scholar. Little bit, if you read his writings, almost you got a feeling like he was an example of what the Lamas talk about, someone who was quite learned. He didn't necessarily study with gurus. He was more, thinking that he was capable of doing these things by himself. But his argumentative nature and his relationship with other scholars and his writings, where he was scathingly critical of other scholars, kind of gives you the impression that he didn't necessarily, had not yet at that life fully actualized, or maybe he was bodhisattva and just showing this aspect, but hadn't actually actualized the teachings. So I think he called path of accumulation sometimes and in reliance upon the commentaries to the Prajnaparamita Sutra. I can't remember now. I remembered before what he called it, but it's a little bit like accumulating the resources. What did he call? I can't remember now. Like the armor. Like if you're going into battle, you have to get. Remember the Twin Towers? Was it, or when are those mud people? What were they doing before it went into battle? Do you remember? What were they called? Do you know? We're not the orgs.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what did they do before they went into battle? There was all those scenes where they're making the swords and the helmets and the armor and everything, right? It's kind of like the path of accumulation, if you want, very simplistic. Accumulating the armor, the resources that are necessary. In this case, what are the things that are necessary to progress along the path? You have to make swords, and you have to have good, angry words, know the sharp way to put people down. Oh, merit. Merit is one thing. What else do you have to accumulate? Wisdom. So those are called the two accumulations. So on the path of accumulation, the bodhisattvas and both the hearers and solitary realizers on their respective Hinayana paths accumulate merit and wisdom. They're learning more and more about emptiness, but that's not their sole preoccupation. Even when they meditate on emptiness, when they arise from that, they recognize they have to accumulate merit. So they do prostrations, they make offerings, they perform the seven-limbed puja, or seven-limbed offering that's so famous that we're talking about in the Lan Rim teachings, that's supposed to encompass all of the essential elements of accumulation of merit and wisdom, right? They offer mandalas and do many other things. Especially in the Mahayana, they devote themselves to the spiritual friend, the Gewei Shenyan, the Geshe, and the Mahayana spiritual friend. And in so doing, not just in Tantra, but even in the Mahayana in general, accumulate vast amounts of merit and purify vast negative karma, like the always crying bodhisattva. Remember the story we told before, how he even took the blood from his own veins to put down the dust. Remember the story? Did we talk about the always crying bodhisattva? Do you remember, Luis? Okay. So you can find, if you have the 8,000 verse Prajnaparamita, I think it's been appended to that, and in the 25,000 verse in the translation. But always crying bodhisattva, he was seeking his guru, didn't know where his real root guru was, that which he would have the very strong connection with. So he prayed and heard from the sky the name of this guru, who just brought tears to his eyes. He felt this was the one, and he sought him out. This teacher was in meditation retreat for a long, long time, many years. And so he waited during this time and made offerings outside, even sold his own body to get offerings. Like right now, we don't want to spend our money to get offerings, let alone chop off your fingers, or of course, if you were in one of the American prisoner of war camps, maybe you'd have no choice about cutting off your parts of your body. No, seems like it. Actually offered to sell his body to get money to buy offerings for the guru. And at one point, he wanted to put water. You know how when there's dust around, if you sprinkle water, especially in India, there's a way to cause the dust to settle and for it to look very fresh and everything when it's otherwise dry. It was a drought, and it said the guru was even causing this, and that always crying bodhisattva took a bamboo and took blood from his arm even, because there was no water, and used that to make the dust go down. Have you heard before, Venerable? Yeah, you heard. So in so doing, he was able to, in one lifetime, in a short period of that lifetime, accumulate the merit that might otherwise have taken many, many eons. So in post-meditation, one accumulates merit. In meditation session, of course, one's meditating on the path, but when one's meditating on emptiness, one tries to accumulate the collection of wisdom. So what's the point at which that path of accumulation in either case, becomes the path of preparation. In Tibetan, we say jorlam, which could be also the path of connection. There are etymologies in different texts for both meanings of the word. It connects you to the path of seeing. It prepares you for the path of seeing. Maybe there's some word that even has both, in English, that has both the meaning to prepare and to connect, that you could even find a better word for. What's the demarcation for that? Do you know, Venerable? When does one, from the path of accumulation, enter into the path of preparation?
An intellectual understanding of emptiness.
You have an intellectual understanding of emptiness. Don, is that right?
The union of calm abiding and special insight, but not necessarily, but not the direct perception yet.
So you, even on the path of accumulation, you would have an intellectual, correct intellectual understanding of emptiness necessarily, because once that understanding is captured by that subtle mind of tranquil abiding, what do we call shamatha? Tibetans call shine, conjoined with vipassana, Tibetans call lakton, penetrative insight or higher seeing. When that kind of intellectual understanding of emptiness was sort of a mental image of emptiness, which is the most that we could probably experience now. Even our mental image may not be being grasped by a realizing consciousness, right? What would our consciousness, maybe we have a mental image of emptiness now. I bet Dorji knows the answer to this. Our understanding of emptiness, we have a mental image of emptiness maybe. If it's factually correct, it might be wrong, but say it's factually correct, would it be a realization at our level?
I'm not sure that I think that would be a correct belief.
Oh, that's so proud. Yeah, this is what we, in Loreg, we call a correct belief, right? Or a correct assumption, or an assumption. So that's what would be taking place earlier on the path. One would have maybe a correct belief in emptiness, and then actually a realization of it through logical reasoning. So one has the mental image now is not only factually correct, but one has correct analysis that brings that about, a certainty of it. But one still has a mental image of emptiness, still on the path of accumulation. When that mental image now is being held by a subtle, subtle meditative mind that's a union of this tranquil mind we call shine or shamatha. It's a mind that is concentrated. It's a first fully qualified samadhi, right? But that mind, not just a samadhi on emptiness, that can take place even on the path of accumulation, but one conjoins that, has the union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight centered on emptiness, one enters into the path of preparation. So it's at that point one is joining or preparing for the path of seeing. That's kind of like the landmark on the path, okay? So what would be the demarcation of entering into the path of seeing? Who knows? Who can I ask? Yeah. So when that meditative realization of emptiness, after a long period of time, collecting merit in post-meditation, again, meditating on emptiness, when the mental image becomes more and more transparent, at a certain point, at the very end of the path of preparation, one has an instant when one actually enters into the path of seeing and one has a direct realization of emptiness. Not with your eyes, it's called the path of seeing, but not only in analogy to direct perception. It doesn't, you've seen the truth, but it doesn't mean with your physical eyes. Your mental consciousness has a first direct realization of emptiness. That acts as the antidote to that self-grasping. Remember, when we meditate on emptiness, we see there's two things. The appearance of the self appears to be truly existent, and in time, you can start to sense how the ignorant mind is grasping to it. the appearance of the I, and the mind that's to which it's appearing, and the mind is kind of conceiving that there is something behind that there really is a truly existent I. Those are both objects to be eliminated eventually, the appearance of the truly existent I and the grasping to it. Eventually, I mean, even until the 10th level, 10th bhumi, there's still going to be the appearance of a truly existent I when we're not in meditative equipoise. But you can eliminate more and more this grasping to it. They're both objects of negation in a sense. So when you realize emptiness directly, this ignorance grasping to it is weakened tremendously, because you're seeing just the opposite of what this ignorance is grasping. It's like, say, for instance, you've got some wrong idea, and someone explains it to you. You know, what would be a good example? Can you think of an analogy? You've got a wrong idea about something. Someone explains you the right way to figure it, to think about it, and then you think, okay, yeah, I think I got it, okay. And for some time you're okay. But then your habit energy comes up again, right? And then you grasp to it the wrong way again. But if you can recall that understanding that someone explained to you or that you started to understand, you have to repeatedly understand that to overcome the grasping, the ignorant state of mind. So on the path of seeing, one has this first direct insight into emptiness. When, it may be sometime later, a great deal of time later, it might be not so long, when one has accumulated enough merit that the next meditative equipoise becomes an antidote not just to this grossest kind of grasping to the self, but to the innate grasping. You know the difference between the intellectually formed and the innate grasping? Intellectually formed grasping is that which has arisen because of reasonings this lifetime that animals might not necessarily have. Okay, you know, I am a Bohemian. I am an American. I am a man. I am a woman. You know, I am a feminist. I am a this. I am a Brahmin. You know, or you know, the self is permanent, partless, and independent. These are kinds of intellectually formed graspings that are eliminated at the path of seeing. When one goes beyond that and is able to produce an antidote to the innate grasping, that really, when we do our meditation now, we're trying to see the innate form of this appearance of an I, that which appears to us all the time, in all our lifetimes, the subtlemost form. When you achieve the antidote to that, that's the beginning of the path of meditation. And that goes on for a long time. From a bodhisattva's perspective, when we talk about the 10 bhumis, the first bhumi is on the path of seeing, and in a sense, maybe part of the first bhumi, or right at the demarcation between the first and the second, all the way up through the 10th bhumi. Through the end of the 10th bhumi is the path of meditation. And once you've eliminated all of the obstructions to omniscience, not only the delusions, all the obstructions to omniscience, that's the beginning of the path of no more learning. That's kind of like Buddhahood in the case of the bodhisattva, nirvana in the case of the hearer or solitary realizer. So let's munch on that for a little while, take a little break. Don has a question.
Good. In order to enter the path of accumulation, we either need to have the spontaneous realization of either bodhicitta or renunciation, depending on your Hinayana. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, once you enter the path of seeing, path of direct realization, perception of emptiness, isn't the next moment sort of the path of meditation, or is there a time you're on the path of seeing?
There's time that you're on the path of seeing. it might be quite a long time. It's until the power of your meditation is capable of acting as an antidote to the innate afflictions. So on the path of seeing, you have a direct realization of emptiness. The object you're realizing is exactly the same as you'll realize later in the path of seeing, on the path of meditation, the same emptiness that the Buddhists see, but the supporting factors of the mind are becoming gradually more powerful on the path of meditation. When you have a collection of merit that supports that mind, that makes that mind then capable of acting as an antidote to the innate afflictions, that's when you enter into the path of meditation.
So on the path of seeing then, what I eliminate are the intellectual.
Or sometimes we could translate them as intellectually formed in Tibetan, or we say kuntak, totally imputed, I guess you could say, intellectually formed.
So it's three entanglements, right? Doubt,
Well,
the transitory collection, and then seeing.
so when we study in detail, sometimes it says that in some presentations, both the Hinayana and Mahayana, it says these three entanglements are eliminated on the path of seeing. But it doesn't mean only those. Those are the main things. So Lama Tsongkhapa praised the explanation, I think of Vasubandhu, I'm not sure, in Abhidharmakosha maybe, saying that these were the three main obstacles, so they're the main things that are centered. But all of the delusions that are eliminated on the path of seeing are also gone, intellectually formed. But these three are like, so there's three hindrances, Lama Tsongkhapa said, or paraphrasing Vasubandhu, to reaching your goal. Not wanting to go, not even wanting to set out on the journey. That's the biggest obstacle, right? So that's kind of like the wrong view of the transitory collection, thinking there really is a self. Then taking the wrong path, that would be like what? The holding wrong moral disciplines as correct. As an example, there are other kinds of wrong paths one could take. That's one of the views when we talked about the 5 afflictions, the 5 root afflictions. Remember, one of them was called afflicted view. Or sorry, the six root afflictions. There were 5 non-views, and then there was the afflicted view that had 5 varieties. And one of those was this grasping to wrong behavior and ascetic practices as supreme. Sometimes in the Hinayana tradition, Theravada tradition, that's sometimes called giving up, adhering to rites and rituals. So sometimes they might criticize the Tibetans for doing pujas or something like this. But the meaning is adhering to rites and rituals, or wrong behavior or ascetic kind of behaviors like standing on one leg, or thinking that burning up one's karma, sitting between these fires and so forth, is the path to liberation. So that's another obstacle, mistaking the way. And the third kind of obstacle is, even if you come to the juncture of the right path and the wrong path, having doubt which one to take. So it's not as though those 3 entanglements are the only things that are eliminated on the path of seeing. It's just that of the things that are abandoned, the Buddha sometimes mentioned those 3 especially, and the commentaries explain kind of because of, in analogy to the 3 kinds of hindrances to reaching a goal on the path, like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so does it follow then the view of transitory collection is an intellectually formed view?
There is both intellectually formed and innate. Yeah, there's a lot of the, like attachment has intellectually formed attachment, and then it has a innate form. Anger, is there an innate form of anger? So you check if anger. What do you think, Venerable, is on the path of seeing? When one eliminates the intellectually formed delusions, afterwards, is there any anger in the Bodhisattva's mind, or let's say the hearer, solitary realizer's mind?
I don't know. But
Is there like an innate kind of anger, or only the intellectually formed is eliminated?
I think anger is pretty much dependent on thinking and on concepts. So I don't think there's an innate anger.
So you can check. Maybe you can check in the different texts. We can talk about that later. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The doubt that you overcome then is the doubt in the path? The doubt?
That's afflicted doubt. So it's intellectually formed. Still to be some, if you talk about the doubt about emptiness, if there's still some doubt, even though you have a correct belief, is there any doubt if you have correct belief about emptiness? There's no doubt, right? Because correct belief is one-pointed mind. So this doubt has to be, because even before you realize emptiness directly, you have no doubt about emptiness, but you have doubts about other things, and afflicted doubts, not just doubts about whether you should buy Microsoft or sell or something like that, whether you should vote for George Bush or John Kerry or, what's his name, John Kerry? Not doubts like that, but afflicted doubts that are, maybe my teacher is a Buddha, maybe he's not, probably not, or maybe he is, but not sure. Or, is this the path that leads to enlightenment? Maybe there's reincarnation, maybe there's not. Those kind of doubts one might still have until one has, I think Geshe Darga used to say, until you have a very high realization, there's still doubts. I remember talking to Alan Wallace. You know Alan Wallace? The author, teacher. He was a monk for many years. You know what his name was? Champa Kelsang. Champa Kelsang was studying with Geshe Darge along with Steve Batchelor. It was quite a high-powered sangha. And I remember bemoaning to him how I just couldn't understand what this self-supporting, substantially existent person was all about and everything. He said, don't worry, your doubts you'll overcome your doubts. You'll understand sometime. So it is true, over time, our doubts, as we study more and more, the doubts start to fade away because things become more and more clear. So, Venerable?
Follow up on some of Don's questioning. Then, in the path of seeing, this length of time, is it spanning over several different meditation times, or are you saying that being absorbed in this meditation that could last for any length of time?
I think it depends on the individual. There are individuals of dull faculties, which are probably much brighter than we are, or I am. Those of middling faculties and those of sharp faculties. And they have different ways of progressing in this way. It might be over many, many meditative sessions, but I think probably, not sure, if it's all in one life even. It might be that one remains on the path of seeing for more than one life. I can't remember. But it's certainly possible that it can last for a very long time. Many, you enter into meditation, you get up and you do many kinds of activities, and then you enter into meditation, and again, you can still generate that direct realization of emptiness again, but it is not yet sufficiently supported by merit and so forth to act as an antidote to the innate afflictions. Some may progress more rapidly. Some, I'm not sure. I think it's possible. I may be wrong. I think it's possible that it might last even through to the next lifetime, path of seeing. Okay.
Are there any minimum or maximum lengths of time that they last?
Like 49 days or something like that. Well, see, the path of seeing, when we talk about the path of seeing, sometimes in the Abhidharma it talks about 16 instants, right? The path of seeing. So, I'll have to do a little more research. When we talk about 16 instants, it doesn't mean like it's gone. It means that there are, according to the Hinayana, the dullest kind of practitioners have to have a sequential realization of 4 kinds of knowledge about each of the 4 Noble Truths. So there's 16 kinds of demarcations: Dharma knowledge, subsequent knowledge, and so forth and so on. That act as antidotes to the intellectually formed afflictions of the desire realm, and then the upper realm, and then the subsequent realization that one is free of those afflictions and so forth. They're said to be 16 instants. So it's not, but it doesn't mean that it just takes place in a short time like that. It might be a very long meditative session. It might be more brief, I think. I haven't experienced myself, unlike some other of you, perhaps. I'm going to go on with some more once. Hopefully, unless you're able to keep me from, yeah.
What about why the path of meditation is called the path of meditation? And is it the word bhavana?
I believe so. I believe it's called the path of meditation. On the path of meditation, you meditate on that which you have previously realized. So you meditate again on emptiness, which you've previously seen on the path of seeing. You previously had the direct realization of emptiness. On the path of meditation, you continue to meditate on that. I think, that's one of the more common meanings of that. In Tibetan, there are 2 words, both sound like gom. One of them means to meditate, one of them means to familiarize. And so in the definition of meditation, in one of Maitreya's 5 texts, he defines meditation as the other word gom. Gom is defined as the gom that means familiarization with a wholesome object, with a virtuous object. Okay, so that's very useful to know. We talked about that before in many occasions. What does meditation mean? From Maitreya's point of view, meditation means to get familiar with. So it becomes part and parcel of your mind, your imprints and so forth, with that which is wholesome. So that gives you a wide spectrum to think of what meditation means. Meditation doesn't have to be only sitting. Meditation can be, in this broader sense, I'm not talking about meditative equipoise, but just meditation in general, can be just familiarizing yourself as you walk, you go to the market, and you're thinking, or you're walking down the stairs and you think, just in the same way, I'm going to, even if I have to go to hell for the sake of others, I like this, I will go down for their benefit. And you go up the stairs, you think, like this, I'm going to, life by life, try to bring myself and others up out of the lower realms into the stages of the path, into the 5 paths, into enlightenment and so forth. You can be practicing the Mahayana thought training as meditation. You can be practicing especially meditation on emptiness, trying to always watch the eye and notice how it seems so obvious. And even, it impels you to get angry and to be attached and to say harsh words and so forth. But then still being aware that it doesn't really exist, but how much it affects you. So all of that can start to develop confidence in your mind that unless you do something, unless you take the medicine of the Dharma, remember in our Lam Rim course, one of the 6 discriminations was to not only to see oneself as the patient and the teacher as the doctor and the Dharma as the medicine, but to energetically take the medicine. You know, unless I practice Dharma, I'm just going to be in a mess. So that's also meditation. So that's familiarizing the mind with a wholesome state. The most powerful way to familiarize the mind is when the mind is concentrated and not buffeted by other distracting thoughts. Because if you're trying to, say the example, say a laser, as opposed to a light bulb. If you have a light bulb here next to the paper or next to an iron bar, the heat of the light bulb, after a long period of time, it might be a little bit warm on the iron bar, the steel girder, or whatever. But if you have a laser pointed, all of the light concentrated in one spot, you can actually burn right through it in a short time. So if you can concentrate your energy, rather than, you're thinking about refuge or bodhicitta or emptiness, but you're kind of half thinking about The Sopranos or, Brad Pitt or, pizza or whatever, your tax return or how sad I am, nobody loves me or whatever. All of these different discursive thoughts that are going through your mind, obviously your meditation is not going to leave much of an imprint. You're not going to become very familiarized with that which you are trying to meditate on. So to make more intense meditation, to familiarize your mind more thoroughly, it's not enough just to think about things, but to concentrate the mind. That's why the Buddha taught first you had to practice the training of morality, discipline, vinaya, and then as your mind gets free of certain distractions, taming your mind from those activities that through the practice of discipline, then you have the capacity to develop concentration. And then with that concentration, then you can really familiarize yourself with that which liberates, which is the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Of course, you need bodhicitta to achieve liberation, to achieve enlightenment, and you need renunciation to achieve liberation. They're kind of the motivating factors. They're kind of the method side. So the method, both Hinayana and Mahayana have method and wisdom necessary. Hinayana, method is mainly renunciation. Wisdom is wisdom of emptiness. Mahayana, the method is bodhicitta to begin with, and the wisdom is also the wisdom of emptiness, with many more reasons and reasonings than is found in the Hinayana path, because the Bodhisattva has to have this courage to remain in samsara for a long period of time and has to have an incredible armament of reasonings to overcome discouragement and hindrances along the path. So they're in the Mahayana, Nagarjuna's teachings, Mahayana teachings, there are, although the same emptiness is being implied as in the Hinayana teachings, according to Chandrakirti and Lama Tsongkhapa, the Mahayana is much more explicit and elaborate about those reasonings because the Bodhisattva needs to have a much more encyclopedic understanding of emptiness, not just one small insight into emptiness. Okay, I'm going to leave the questions there and just go a little bit further here. So, reasons I'm mentioning the 5 paths is that also in the Heart Sutra, there's in the commentaries, it explains that certain sections of the sutra are indicative of the path of accumulation. Some are kind of indicating how the Bodhisattva is on the path of preparation practice, how the Bodhisattva is on the path of seeing practice, how they practice on the path of meditation. Certain lines kind of give that flavor. And also the path of no more learning, what is the state of enlightenment. Especially the mantra, which is, usually you don't find mantras in sutras, generally. And so some of the commentators, the Indian commentators, the Tibetan commentators, said that it almost looks like this is a very, very special sutra, maybe even kind of making a connection with Tantra, in a sense, leaving some imprint of that. And the mantra itself of the perfection of wisdom, that we'll be talking about the verses coming before it in the succeeding classes, it's talking about these 5 stages in the words of the mantra. So who knows the mantra? Luis, you know the mantra? Without looking? Not yet. Paramasan, Paramgan. Yeah, no, it's good. Para samgati, Bodhi. Bodhisvaha. Okay, so sometimes the reason the Om is in parentheses here is because often it's not found in some of the texts. Sometimes it's recited, sometimes. Generally, when we recite it in the large gatherings, they don't say Tayata Om. They just say Tayata Gate. So the Gate, the first Gate, is supposed to be implying the path of accumulation. What is Gate? Gate is, what language is that? Tibetan? Sanskrit, right? It's usually, if you look at you know what past participle means? Does that sound too didactic? Do you know what past participle means, Tenzin? Of a verb? The past participle, like of the verb to go. Who can give the past participle of the verb to go? Gone. You know, I have gone, it has gone. So in Sanskrit, the past participle of the verb to go is gata. But here it says gate, so it's a little. It's kind of interesting. All the time, instead of saying tara, we say om tare tu ture. Sometimes this e at the end, I'm not absolutely sure, but I haven't seen explained in any detail. I think from my own meager investigations, it's kind of like the vocative case. You know what vocative means? In different cases? You know the nominative, what are they called? What's the second case?
I thought even like proper names had a vocative form.
Yeah.
Is that wrong?
Yeah.
So it's
Sorry.
different if I'm just
Trime.
if I'm saying your name is George, that's different than if I'm saying, hey George.
Yeah, exactly. Say George, kind of the vocative. So in Sanskrit, there's a different. If George was Sanskrit, there would be a different sound, not just loud or criticizing George, but there would actually be a different vowel at the end, sort of. So almost looks like it's the vocative of these. Also in our many different mantras like that, but there may be some other meanings. I haven't come across them. So gate is supposed to mean gone, although it's sounding like the vocative case, it seems like. That refers to the path of accumulation, where one has gone beyond the ordinary worldly paths and entered into the Mahayana path. Okay? Second gate, again gone. Now you've gone, it doesn't say gone further, but again you've gone. Now you've gone beyond, what have you gone beyond on the path of preparation? You've gone beyond, yeah, that's good. You've gone beyond the path of accumulation. You've gone beyond just having an ordinary mind that realizes emptiness. Now you've reached a state that is conducive to connecting or preparing you for the path of seeing. So you've gone again. Then paragate. Para, you know what para means in Sanskrit? Paramita? Beyond. Like when we say paramita, the practices, what do we call them? The prajna paramita is the wisdom gone beyond, right? Or the practices that have reached the other shore. Para kind of means other or beyond. So paragate, gone beyond, this refers to the path of seeing, where now it's quite exceptional. You've got gate already. You've separated yourself from ordinary beings because you're on the path of, let's say in the Mahayana, you're on the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. Paragate, you've gone beyond the ordinary worldly mind. You've become an Arya being, right? When you achieve, do you know that? When you achieve the path of seeing, you become an Arya, right? A being who is noble in the sense of or is superior, not in the sense of perhaps of the Aryan race that invaded India and were called themselves Aryans because they felt superior. But the Buddha said a real Arya is someone who realizes truth directly. So you become an Arya. What else could you say, Venerable, do you know? When you become an Arya, what else do you become at that time? Rich? Famous? Bored? You become also what?
Actual Sangha refuge.
Yeah, you become actual Sangha, because even though when we talk about relative Sangha, it refers to, let's say, 4 fully ordained monks that are capable of being the cooperative condition for giving ordination and so forth. Still need the abbot also, but without, even if someone wanted to give ordination to the monks, without the 4 monks to be there, 4 fully ordained monks, they can't actually give ordination of, novice or bhikshu. So usually conventional Sangha is considered to be 4 or more fully ordained monks. Maybe also fully ordained nuns, not sure. But that's only the conventional Sangha. Actual Sangha is any one being who's realized emptiness directly. Any Arya being is an actual Sangha. There's someone who you can rely on to take the medicine of the Dharma that can actually guide you perfectly. So you don't need 4 Arya beings to be Sangha. Just one becomes Sangha. So gate, tadyata means what, by the way? That first word. The Tibetans pronounce it tayata. Diana, do you know why? But it looks like tadyata in Sanskrit. Yeah, in Tibetan, that D, the 3rd letter of tadyata, that's the first syllable, tad. And Tibetans wouldn't pronounce it tad. There's a convention, if it were a Tibetan word, it'd be pronounced te, or te, tayata. But in Sanskrit, it's tadyata. Tadyata is kind of like, is a counterpoise to svaha, the end, which the Tibetans usually pronounce soha. Tadyata and soha, a little bit like amen. Do you know what amen means? Georgie, do you know what amen means? Okay. So are you Jewish? You're not sure. Okay. Because there's supposedly, I've read in some books. I'm not a scholar about these things, but there's a difference between the meaning of amen supposedly in the Jewish tradition and the Christian tradition. Supposedly in the Jewish tradition, some of you might check on the internet or with your rabbis or whatever. In the Jewish tradition, amen is kind of like, it's like this. It's like this. In like New York. Whereas in the Christian tradition, it comes at the end, it means what? Kind of like, may it be. Amen. We say usually, and Christians usually say amen at the end of the prayer, right? So at the beginning here, tadyata actually means it is thus. It's kind of something that's prefacing, prefacing a statement of truth. This is the way it is. What would we say? What would you say in Los Angeles or New York? This is the way it is, baby. Listen. Listen up. I'm going to tell you like it is. That's tadyata. Gate, this is the way it is. Gone, gone, gone beyond. This is what you have to practice. Then para samgate. The para means beyond. Sam is another prefix in Sanskrit. Like we say, samyak sam Buddha. Do you ever heard that, Venerable, in some of the mantras when we say samyak sam? Perfectly completed Buddha. So sam kind of has the, one way you could translate it is perfectly, gone perfectly beyond, or gone completely beyond. That's the path of meditation. When one is, during that time, one is not as just gone beyond, become an Arya being, distinguished yourself from ordinary beings, but you've gone completely beyond that. You've started to eliminate the innate delusions and the obstructions to omniscience. The result of that, from the Bodhisattva path, is what? What's the path of no more? What's the result of the path of no more learning? What is that state of path of no more learning and omniscience? Enlightenment, right? What's the Sanskrit word for enlightenment? Bodhi. So Bodhi here refers to the Mahayana path of no more learning. Sometimes even the Hinayana and Nirvana is called the Hinayana enlightenment. Can talk about it that way, but I think this is mainly talking about the Mahayana path. It is like this. This is telling how the Bodhisattvas should progress. Go, gone. You've gone beyond, gone completely beyond enlightenment. So be it. Svaha kind of has the implication of may it take root. May this take root in my own mind. So that even not only are sections of the sutra indicative of these 5 paths, even the mantra itself embodies that. So how do you achieve those paths? How do you achieve the goal is through meditating on emptiness, which is like the explicit subject of the sutra. But the implicit subject, that which is kind of implied by it, is the path structure that brings that evolution about, these 5 paths. It's not something that just takes place immediately. You just sit down, your first meditation course at Kopan, and someone explains emptiness, and then you go, I got it. And then you leave, It's something that has to be achieved gradually. There was one, I think she may still be teaching, there's one nun, do you remember? In Bodh Gaya. Maybe I shouldn't. She had gone to do a 3-year retreat in Dharamsala, actually built a cabin. This is before Max was doing his retreats. And she went up, and the next day or 2 days later, she came down. And she said, "Oh, I've realized emptiness. I don't have to do the 3-year retreat." And maybe, I can't say, maybe that was, exaggerated mind. Sometimes we think we've had some realizations. Or maybe we have some kind of experience. Maybe the air has entered into the central channel, or you have some very special experience, a remnant of previous lives, kind of the karmic cause of which was your meditation in previous lives. But that may not actually be the high realization you think. On the other hand, even you might think that you haven't had no experiences in meditation. Is that our experience? Maybe that's many of our experience. But as you get familiar in meditation, sometimes some experiences can come because of the work you've done in previous lifetimes. Getting familiar with these things.
So that would be why you would have a spiritual friend, so you could run these things by him, so you didn't just go out and say, "I've realized emptiness and I don't have to go to school anymore"?
That's one of the reasons that we depend on the Sangha and the Arya beings especially, and our spiritual friends, the Sangha, and especially the Buddhas and so forth. And of course the Dharma. We run things past our understanding of the Dharma, first of all. But then even our understanding may not be very precise, so we do talk to our spiritual friends, the Sangha and the Gurus, the Guru Buddhas, or we take confidence in the scriptures that the Buddha taught. Yeah, otherwise, it's very easy to make missteps along the path.
It's very easy to delude yourself into thinking that you were further along the path than you actually are.
I believe you're right. And on the other hand, one has to be encouraged also not to feel self-deprecating or low, oh, I didn't make anything, I'm never, everyone's better than me. One has to have an understanding that's kind of realistic and equal, that even if one doesn't seem to be making a lot of progress, that with the right state of mind, that can be very productive. Whatever kind of negative karma is ripening in our mind, whether it be in what seems to be unfortunate circumstances or in the turmoil of our mind, our strong anger, our strong lust, our strong attachment, our strong addiction, our strong jealousy, our strong pride, whatever, all of that we can see as the karmic consequences of what we've done in the past. And with the right perspective, one can use that both in Tonglen, on the method side to develop bodhicitta, and one can meditate on first of all, on the causal evolution of that, which is leading one to understanding emptiness, that this is a dependent arising. It depends on, this anger is not, I'm not naturally an angry person. That's not my inherent nature. This is depending on causes and conditions that were set about, causes set about in the past, conditions now. And then as one understands that level of dependent arising, one can understand more and more how this is even empty of true existence. So those things can actually become grist for the mill of your meditation. What otherwise, we've said many times, you remember someone comes up to your yard, you're looking out your window having breakfast, the toast is coming up, you're having your tea, it's a big dump truck comes out in your front lawn, the thing starts coming up, and all of this excrement, goes on your front lawn, and you can think, oh my Buddha, you can just think of this as terrible, whereas there's another way of looking at it. You can think of this as fantastic fertilizer. You've got fantastic amount of fertilizer now that you can use for fertilize different things. So all of the things that happen to you with the right perspective, you can think of as cooperative condition for your realization. It's just like they said in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, Shantideva talks about some warriors that have scars on their faces and their bodies actually see them as embellishments, as ornaments. Like the German sword fighters in the Renaissance and in the 1800s also. If they had a scar across the face, instead of thinking of it as being something that makes you ugly, it actually was a sign of some beauty. So the bodhisattvas, whatever happens, we try to see this in a positive sense. What's the common expression? When the world gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? So the sort of the hidden intention here, implicit, is the explanation of the path structure. If you study the Prajnaparamita Sutra, like they do in the monasteries, the Abhisamaya Alamkara, the text by Maitreya, that talks about the hidden meaning of the Prajnaparamita Sutra. There he talks a little bit about emptiness, but mainly talking about the method side. The 5 paths, how the hearers progress, how the solitary realizers progress, how the bodhisattvas progress, and the state of no more learning, what the qualities of Buddha are and so forth. All of those are kind of implied within the Prajnaparamita. The Buddha's always saying, this is empty, this is empty, this is empty. If you just read it without knowing that structure, the same way like Tenzin was asking, if you try to practice without having spiritual friends to sort of show you the path to go on, you could just think the Buddha just was talking things just randomly. Whatever came to his mind. Oh, there's no cup, there's no paper cup, there's no paper, there's no glasses. It just sounds like he was just talking about anything he felt like. But if you see, he had a very particular agenda, talking about the what he was talking about empty of, the objects of emptiness, were the various elements of the practice. And so one can relate that because there is a conventional truth to phenomena. I'm glad you didn't have any tea in your mouth. Okay. Okay. So let's take a look at where these things begin. Now, there's a little bit in the commentary that we're using, which is translated in this text, the Heart Sutra explained. It doesn't mean he's the only one who's translated it. On page 139, it starts, right, by Tendarla Ramba. So it's more clear here. It's not quite clear where the demarcation is in his text of the path of accumulation and the path of preparation, although we'll see. We'll talk about it next time also. In Atisha's text and in some of the other Indian commentators, they had different ideas where, which stanzas refer to the path of accumulation, where does the stanza begin that's talking about the path of preparation and seeing and so forth. But let's say on page 153, and if someone sees there's a reference to the path of accumulation or preparation before this, it just, in the sentence right before that, he says, those modes are like the way to meditate on emptiness on the occasion of the paths of accumulation and preparation. This is near the bottom of the page, before the last paragraph, the last sentence before that. So this is talking about the just before, well, let's see, where the path of seeing, he says, is going to start. With respect to the mode of meditation on the path of seeing, it says in the instructions of Atisha, set down by Lekbe Sherab of Ngok. This is one of the people who wrote down Atisha's sayings. In the instructions of Atisha, that it is said that having addressed Shariputra, thus all phenomena are empty. Where is that? That's all phenomena are emptiness, or empty. Indicates the door of liberation of liberation, emptiness. Remember we talked about these 3 doors of liberation? Remember what the 3 doors of liberation were? The green door, the black door, the yellow door, whatever. So emptiness talks about the emptiness of entities. Signlessness talks about the emptiness of causes or effects. Well, wishlessness, what is wishlessness talking about? Wishes is something in the future, right? Future refers to effects. So wishlessness refers to the emptiness of effects or results. Signlessness talks about that causes have no inherent signs. Emptiness talks about the natures. So in a sense, the emptiness is talking about what's here and now, all phenomena, but signlessness and wishlessness are other doors of liberation, so to meditate more precisely on emptiness. So he's talking about, this is kind of, at this point, this is kind of the demarcation of how the Bodhisattvas, the verses that talk about the practice of paragate, the